Brought to you by Pfizer.
In this video, you're going to see the future.
There you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand's brilliant show. Dave Martin's on the show. Hello there, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us. It's brilliant to see you there, and it's so fantastic that you could make it. I'm excited to talk to you. I've actually done notes. I've done notes of questions I would ask Dave Martin. Do you want to hear him, Dave?
Hey, isn't it more fun when we just do it when it happens? But yeah, it's awesome.
This is gonna. Thank you very much for that coffee. This is gonna. I mean, this is somewhat a tease because we're still on YouTube, so people are gonna know that you wouldn't be able to answer these questions while we're on YouTube. Do you, for example, look at this one. Did vaccines kill more people than they saved, and can we prove that? You can't be answering that kind of thing on YouTube unless the answer is don't know, don't be ridiculous. They saved countless lives, and we should, as Bill Gates is suggesting, have a vaccine for everything. We've got a brilliant clip of that as well. I also wanted to ask you about the debate, Dave, whether or not it's plausible that it's part of a concerted effort to replace Biden, because I can't imagine that they put him in that position without knowing the likely ramifications.
Yeah, that wasn't a surprise. There were no surprises there.
There are no surprises. There are no surprises. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I saw your interview with Alex Jones recently, and I also saw a clip that from our last conversation where we talked about the WHO, and in particular, their immunity from prosecution was getting a lot of heat, a lot of love on the platform of X. So I'm very excited for us to have the conversations today about bird flu vaccines, about where we are with the pandemic, about the reason that the information is being delayed, and whether or not the UK and French elections are simply a kind of a globalist beauty parade. So there's quite a lot to talk to you about, Dave.
So much to talk about and so little time, but we're going to make a lot more of these times, so that's great.
We are going to collaborate more, you and I, and indeed Kim, your beautiful wife. There's quite a lot for us to discuss. There's a hell of a lot of future for us to discuss.
That's exactly right.
All right,
well, we're looking.
Thank you, but Dave, I love you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to talk to you lot. Thank you, Dave. That's great. So if you don't mind, well done, guys. Thank you. So first of all, this is what I want to talk to you about. This is, I suppose because I'm British, this matters to me personally. I live in this country. That means there's all sorts of stuff that I don't talk to you about. I'm not bothering you with my feelings about England's advance through the Euros tournament. I'm not troubling you with what my personal opinions are on the formation or my admiration for Ivan Toney and his particular style of penalty taking. I'm not bothering any of you with that because we've got important, revolutionary, radical matters to discuss. But when it comes to British politics, particularly as it seems that we've elected another figure with strong connections to the WF, like Macron, who's just assured himself a significant number of years, even if it's just 2 or 3 more years in the office of president. I think it's worth us looking at these leaders and what they represent. We've talked to you before about Keir Starmer's relationship or lack of relationship with Julian Assange, his potential opinions on the Assange case, his authoritarian position on previous matters of unrest in political and social matters in the United Kingdom when he was head of the CPS. But a new litmus test that's blessedly emerged in the post-pandemic era is we can see how authoritarian leaders are by looking at their response during the pandemic period. We can look at whether or not they believe in independence, freedom, liberty, freedom of communication, censorship, surveillance, all issues that you know are bound up in the incumbent and ancillary issues that connect to the pandemic and the way that it was legislated. And here is a beautiful montage of Keir Starmer new UK globalist supremo, talking about the pandemic and in particular offering us what solutions he agrees with. And I think the thing I really want you to pay attention to here is the way he talks about how the degree to which he'll be willing to collaborate with the government. Now, you know, in your country, they always say, this is a bill that's so popular, it has support on both sides of the aisle. And it's always support for a war. It's often that, or support for voting themselves a new pay rise. It's for me not an indicator of a healthy democracy, but quite the opposite. How democracy has become a mask for a kind of obfuscated, somehow vague new form of tyranny. This is an interesting example of how that works. Let's look at Keir Starmer's position on the pandemic at different points throughout it. Pay close attention, y'all.
The scientists are clear. Our best defence is the booster jab. The vaccine is safe and effective. It protects us and those around us. That's why Labour
Can it affect, but remember, no clinical trials for transmission. Just bear that in mind.
supports the government's plan to get every adult boosted by the end of the month. And personally, I want to urge every one of you to book an appointment or go to a walk-in centre as soon as you can. I've just had my booster, quick, painless, no side effects, and I would encourage absolutely everyone who is eligible to come forward and have their booster. Don't be taken in by the misinformation.
Blue Nose Bob in the Rumble chat calling him Keir Pharma. That might overtake Starmageddon as the best available new nickname. Look at the degree that he's going to personally advocate for those medications. Now remember, at the time, perhaps in good faith, you could believe, and I'm fascinated to hear what our guest Dave Martin says about this, that those political leaders, those media pundits, those endless advocates for pharmaceutical intervention that were willing to call it vaccines, not gene therapy, that were willing to pressurize and shame people that were vaccine hesitant or vaccine reluctant or downright cynical about globalist intervention and evident authoritarianism on the rise. Remember the position that these leaders took and note how aligned they are with the current government. This is Keir Starmer, of course, when he was in opposition. But where is his opposition, obstructive or opposing or inquiring or interrogating role as the official leader of the opposition? Do you not feel that if it's the government's role not to represent you but to oppress you, surely it's the role of the opposition to resist and inquire of the government as to what they're doing and how they're achieving their stated goals, their manifesto? How often do you remember seeing Keir Starmer going, "What's going on with Julian Assange? Is he still in Belmarsh? Are we going to do something about that?" You never saw it. What you saw was more of this kind of stuff.
Come forward, have your booster. Think of yourself, think of others, think of your communities. Places like this are open. It's quick, it's easy. Please do it.
Anti-vaxxers getting platforms and so on.
Well, we have to deal with the anti-vax campaigns because they will cost lives. And if we need to pass emergency legislation to deal with them, I'd be quite prepared to work with the government on that. We could pass it in a couple of days in Parliament. And
misinformation costs lives, and if we have to create emergency legislation to deal with them, I'm happy to work with the government on that. We can draw it up in a couple of days. That's talking about censorship. Do you have any idea what's being discussed there? The ability to newly censor, novel new ways to censor and control information, just being blithely discussed on morning television in the UK, as if freedom of speech ain't a thing, as if individual freedom isn't a thing, as if the right to be cynical about a product that has shown us more and more that we were correct to be cynical isn't a legitimate right of all of us individually and almost a duty of us now collectively.
the sooner we do that, frankly, the better, because for many NHS staff, it is really distressing. They're under huge pressure, and it's been building over the last few weeks and months. They're all doing their level best. They're all seeing that it's getting very, very difficult, and to come out and to have to confront that or even hear that is against the national interest. And if we need legislation, I'll sit down with Boris Johnson. We can draft it. We can pass it very, very quickly, because that misinformation will cost lives. We need as many people vaccinated as possible.
Even if your argument is this is Keir Starmer in response to a crisis, we live in a time of incessant, unending crisis now. So how do you imagine Keir Starmer will respond if NATO say we need troops from every NATO member country? Or how do you imagine that Keir Starmer will respond if the WHO say we need you to participate in this treaty and we'll be taking taxes from your country? How do you imagine with the escalation of war, with the escalation of digital IDs, digital currencies, new measures and means for individual control, new measures and ideas predicated on saving the environment or protecting the climate or whatever, a seemingly worthy cause? How do you imagine this man as leader will take it? And how significant, let me know in the chat, how significant do you think it is that he is a fully paid up and maybe fully purchased member of the World Economic Forum? Let me know.
All need to give people confidence to be vaccinated, and that is pulling together as part of the programme. It is also dealing with this misinformation that is out there. As the Prime Minister knows, we've got the highest regulatory and medical safety standards in the world, but it's really important we do everything possible to counter dangerous.
But Met Police calls for common sense over Christmas. Let's just settle down into some common sense and celebrate the birth of Lord Jesus in a sensible way, though, not like God is incarnate among us and that the whole festival has been commodified and that people are having massive Christmas parties in government, including actually Keir Starmer, although his party was a little more muted. I seem to recall long lens shots of him clutching a beer while working, because they're so different. This is a wonderful new hue of authoritarianism that's been ushered in, same as in France. Vive la France, vive la revolution, vive the march towards globalisation and authoritarianism.
Frankly, life-threatening disinformation about vaccines. We on this side have called for legislation to be introduced to clamp down on this, with financial penalties for companies that fail to act. So will the Prime Minister work with us on this and bring forward emergency legislation in the coming days, which I think the whole House would support?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are, of course, working to tackle all kinds of disinformation across the internet, and he's right to single out the anti-vax.
There you are. That is how Keir Starmer was in opposition. How might you imagine that he will govern? Presumably in accordance with global edicts, presumably kowtowing to institutions such as the WHO and NATO and financial institutions of a global nature. Presumably he will be inviting and enticing Bill Gates at all to contribute. This, to me, does not seem like a departure from the last 14 years for all of their ineptitude and obvious corruption. Rishi Sunak with his connections to Moderna even prior to entering government, extraordinarily. Although this might be a variation, it's not a significant change, is it? And this taken in step with France's recent political machinations, where it seems the system can be manoeuvred to create the desired results while maintaining for us the spectacle of democracy or representative electoral systems. Choose your own idiom. It seems to me more than ever we have to start recognizing that radical change is what's required. And where does radical change begin? I would offer you it begins within. It begins by listening to your own heart. It believes by connecting to nature and one another and rejecting the information that we get from Keir Starmer and his globalist media acolytes. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, we're going to be available for a matter of seconds more because I'm joined by our fantastic guest, Dave Martin. Dave Martin has torn up the rule book when it comes to reporting on matters of globalism and global health, the power of big pharma, the corruption of regulatory bodies, and I'm today going to ask him the questions that matter. Starting with this one, Dave Martin. Dave Martin, once and for all, can you tell us, for an actual fact, do you believe that those medications killed more people than they saved?
Let's do a very simple math exercise, shall we?
Yes.
The math exercise that we're told in the world of public health is really simple.